What's the biggest country in the world? Most of us would say Russia, and we'd be right. But what if I asked you a different question? What if I asked you to picture the continent of Europe? All of it. From the coast of Portugal to the plains of Poland, from the fjords of Norway down to the islands of Greece. Hold that image in your mind. Now, picture Brazil. Chances are, the Europe in your head is a sprawling, vast collection of nations, while Brazil seems smaller. A large country, for sure, but maybe the size of the western half of Europe. This mental picture, this geographic instinct that so many of us share, is fundamentally wrong. And the story of why it's wrong reveals a hidden truth not just about Brazil, but about how all of us perceive the world. Because Brazil isn't just bigger than you think. It's a continental nation hiding in plain sight, with a scale that defies our imagination and consequences that affect every single person on this planet. This is the story of a giant we consistently underestimate. The puzzle begins with the map on your wall, or more likely, the digital map on your screen. The world you see there is a lie, a useful lie, but a lie nonetheless. Most of the world maps we use every day are based on the Mercator projection, a design created in 1569 by the cartographer Gerardus Mercator. Its genius was that it allowed sailors to plot a course in a straight line, which was revolutionary for navigation. But to make this possible on a flat surface, Mercator had to make a massive compromise. He had to distort the size of land masses. The further away from the equator a country is, the more stretched and bloated it appears. The most famous example is Greenland, which on a Mercator map looks roughly the same size as Africa. In reality, Africa is 14 times larger. This distortion makes countries in the northern hemisphere, like Canada, Russia, and all of Europe, look disproportionately huge. Conversely, countries straddling the equator, the entire continents of Africa and South America, are visually compressed. They are shrunk. And no country is a more dramatic victim of this cartographic illusion than Brazil. On a Mercator map, Brazil looks like it could be comfortably tucked into the space occupied by Scandinavia. But when you look at its true size, using a globe or an equal area projections map, the reality is staggering. Brazil's land area is 8.5 million square kilometers. The continent of Europe, excluding Russia, is about 6 million square kilometers. Let me repeat that. Brazil is significantly larger than the entire continent of Europe. You could take every single country in the European Union, from France to Germany, Spain to Sweden, Italy to Ireland, and fit them all inside Brazil's borders, and you would still have enough space left over for the United Kingdom. This isn't just a quirky geographic fact. It's a fundamental recalibration of our worldview. Our mental atlases have been shaped by a visual trick, a 16th century navigational tool that has quietly warped our sense of global proportions for 500 years. So, let's peel back the illusion and embark on a journey across this South American giant to understand what this colossal scale actually means on the ground. To say Brazil is big is an understatement. It's to say the ocean is wet. The scale is so immense that it's almost impossible to grasp with statistics alone. So let's translate it into human terms. Imagine you're in the city of João Pessoa, on the easternmost tip of Brazil, watching the sun rise over the Atlantic. If you decided to drive west to the country's border with Peru, you would travel over 4,000 kilometers. That's the same distance as driving from Lisbon, Portugal, to Moscow, Russia. You would cross an entire continent's worth of distance without ever needing your passport. Now imagine a flight. Flying from Brazil's northernmost point, on the border with Guyana, down to its southern border with Uruguay, is a journey of nearly 4,400 kilometers. That's further than a flight from London to Baghdad. It is a distance that spans from the scorching heat of the equatorial line to the cool, temperate climates of the south, where it can even snow. This immense latitudinal and longitudinal spread means Brazil isn't a single place. It's a collage of worlds. In the north, you have the Amazon basin, not just a part of the rainforest, but 60% of the entire Amazon, the largest and most biodiverse tropical rainforest on Earth. This single region within Brazil is larger than Western Europe. Its climate is thick, humid, and defined by the rhythm of the colossal Amazon River, which at some points is so wide you cannot see the other shore. Travel southeast and you enter the Sertão. This is a vast, semi-arid backland, a world of sun-scorched earth, hardy cattle ranches, and a culture forged by resilience against drought. It's a landscape and a way of life that feels a world away from the humid jungle. Further south, you find the Pantanal, the world's largest tropical wetland, an immense, sprawling floodplain teeming with wildlife, from jaguars to capybaras, that looks more like the savannas of Africa than anything else in South America. Keep going south, and the country transforms again. You reach the vast agricultural heartlands of the Center-West, the breadbasket of the world, and finally, you arrive in the pampas of the far south. These are temperate, windswept grasslands, a landscape of rolling hills and cattle ranches, where the cowboys, known as gauchos, have a culture more in common with their neighbors in Uruguay and Argentina than their own countrymen in the Amazon. Rainforest, desert, wetland, savanna, prairie. One country. The sheer environmental diversity contained within its borders is unmatched by any other nation. Brazil is not a country with many ecosystems. It is a collection of ecosystems that happen to be a country. This continental scale hasn't just shaped Brazil's landscape, it has profoundly shaped its people, its history, and its very identity. For most of its history, Brazil was not a unified entity, but a coastal archipelago of disconnected settlement. The vast, intimidating interior was a formidable barrier. The Portuguese colonists clung to the Atlantic coast, establishing cities like Salvador and Rio de Janeiro, while the immense hinterland remained largely unexplored by Europeans. Connecting this vast territory has been the central challenge of Brazilian history. Building roads and railways wasn't just an infrastructure project, it was a nation-building one. The distances were, and still are, immense. Even today, many parts of the Amazon are only accessible by boat or plane. This historical isolation meant that different regions of Brazil developed almost like separate countries, each with its own distinct accent, music, cuisine, and culture. The confident, fast-paced vibe of a Paulista from the mega-city of São Paulo is starkly different from the laid-back, Afro-Caribbean rhythm of a Baiano from Salvador. Perhaps nothing illustrates the struggle with Brazil's scale more than the story of its own capital. Until 1960, the capital was Rio de Janeiro, a beautiful but crowded city on the coast, reinforcing the country's coastal identity. But in a monumental act of will, the government decided to forge a new capital, Brasília, deep in the country's barren interior. It was built from scratch in just 41 months, a futuristic city dropped into the middle of nowhere. The goal was symbolic and strategic, to physically drag the nation's center of gravity inward, to force Brazil to confront and conquer its own vastness. Brasília was a statement, a declaration that Brazil would no longer be a nation defined by its coastline, but one that embraced its entire continental destiny. It was an audacious, almost impossible gamble, driven entirely by the psychological weight of the country's own immense size. So, why does any of this matter to someone living outside of Brazil? Why should this geographic lesson be on your mind? Because underestimating Brazil's scale leads directly to underestimating its global importance. And that is a mistake we can no longer afford to make. First, the environment. When we talk about climate change, we talk about the Amazon rainforest, often called the lungs of the planet for its crucial role in absorbing carbon dioxide. It is easy to think of the Amazon as a kind of abstract shared global commons, but it is not. Over 60% of it lies within the sovereign borders of one single nation. This means that the political and economic decisions made in Brasilia have a more direct impact on the future of the global climate than those made in almost any other capital. The sheer size of Brazil's portion of the Amazon gives it immense leverage and a terrifying level of responsibility. When we see satellite images of fires in the Amazon, we are not just watching a forest burn. We are watching a continent-sized ecosystem housed primarily within one nation, whose fate is inextricably linked to our own. Second, food. Brazil's vast and varied territory has turned it into an agricultural superpower. It is one of the world's top exporters of soybeans, beef, coffee, sugar, and orange juice. The food on your table, whether you live in Europe, Asia, or North America, is increasingly likely to have originated on the vast plains of Brazil's interior. This makes Brazil a critical player in global food security. But this agricultural miracle comes at a cost, often involving deforestation and land use conflicts that play out across its enormous territory. Understanding Brazil's scale is understanding the immense pressures and stakes involved in balancing feeding the world with protecting the planet. Finally, geopolitics. A country of 250 million people that is larger than the contiguous United States and larger than Europe cannot be a minor player on the world stage. It is a regional anchor, a cultural powerhouse, and an economic giant. Its size grants it a strategic depth and a wealth of natural resources that few other nations can match. To ignore Brazil or to relegate it to a secondary role is to misread the geopolitical map of the 21st century as badly as the Mercator projection misreads the geographical one. We started this journey with a simple question about a map, but we end it with a much deeper realization. The distortion of Brazil on our maps is a perfect metaphor for the distortion of Brazil in our global consciousness. We have consistently shrunk it, simplified it, and filed it away under convenient tropical cliches. We see the postcard images of Carnival in Rio or the Amazon River, but we fail to see the continental reality that contains all of it and so much more. Brazil's true size challenges us. It's not just a country, it's a world unto itself, a planet in miniature. It's a place of bewildering diversity and staggering contradictions, all held together under a single flag across a territory so vast it's difficult to comprehend. To truly see Brazil for what it is, a nation of continental scale and consequence, is to correct a fundamental error in our understanding of the world. It's a reminder that the maps we inherit are not always the truth, and that sometimes the biggest things are the ones we've been taught to overlook. The first step to understanding our complex, interconnected planet might just be to update the map inside our heads. What other geographic truths have we all been quietly ignoring? Let me know in the comments what other hidden realities you'd like me to investigate next. And if this story changed how you see the world map, consider subscribing for more deep dives that challenge our perspective.